Welcome back to the Shut the Hell Up and Sell podcast. My name is Ronell Richards. I am your host and the author of Shut the Hell Up and Sell. Again, want to welcome you guys into another banger of an episode. This has been a ton of fun for me. I get to talk to other sales leaders and folks that are passionate about sales and passionate about helping bring back the love, bring back the joy, and get you guys energized and ready to go out there and be successful in the business world and the sales world. So without any further ado, I want to introduce our guest today. I've got Kristie Jones joining us today. Kristie, how are you?
Good. I'm great. Thanks, Ronell, for having me on.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you. The last time I spoke to you, though, you had a much better view.
Yes. Scottsdale versus St. Louis. There is a difference.
There's a little bit of a difference.
A little bit of
what
difference.
I hear.
Yeah. No palm trees. Yep. No warm
palm
weather.
trees, no pool. I think there was a
No
pool
pool.
in the background.
Yep. No pool.
But I will say your background game, it is on point. It does look, you're clearly very good at decorating your home.
Thank you. No, actually, her name is Sonia. I'll give her full credit.
I
have
Shout out to Sonia.
Yep. Thank you, Sonia, for making my Zoom room beautiful.
All right. Well, hey, I appreciate you giving her credit. But although you do get to take credit because you paid for it. So.
I did. Yes. I said I don't have creative ability, but I have a checkbook.
Nice. Well, hey, as we get into this, if you wouldn't mind just starting with telling us how you are impacting the world of sales and business. What is it that you do?
Sure. My swim lane and superpower is helping startup founders, usually with revenue between, I say, 0 and 5. So really coming in and helping them build out the processes, everything from building out an outbound prospecting strategy to moving people through the funnel, customer success after that. So a lot of the tech founders that I work with are just that. They're coders, they're developers. They, had an idea, they went and built a software product, but maybe they don't have a sales or marketing background. And so I have a strong relationship with a lot of VCs throughout the Midwest. And so a lot of times when they get that Series A funding, I get a phone call saying, can I introduce you? So I call myself an extra set of expertise hands.
Extra set of expertise hands. That's a mouthful. I love it.
I got Kristieisms.
You've got Kristie. Okay, we're going to get into
some
Kristieisms.
You'll probably hear a few Kristieisms.
I like that. All right. So let's take a step back before we get into our Kristieisms. I want to know where it began for you. What was your very first sales gig? And I'm talking about, sure, with a lot of us, hey, when we were kids, there was something that we did that, that kind of let us know that, hey, maybe this sales thing is something I could do. But when was the first job that you had? Someone gave you a check. What were you doing?
I think like all of us, as a teenager, I was babysitting, but in fairness, I love my own child, but I'm not super fond of maybe a lot of other people's children. So that really wasn't a long-term gig for me. But the really first sales job that I think really does attribute to what I'm doing today, and I talk about it a lot, my favorite sales job was waiting tables. Fit my personality perfectly, right? Fast pace. I got to, use a little sassiness, interact with the public. And the thing I loved most about it was I got instant feedback on my performance. So every time someone got up and the table was clean and my tip was left behind, I got feedback on how I had done. And so I think that's where I first started to realize that there are jobs with a set income and jobs where you set your own income.
That's interesting. So one of the things that was appealing to you is that you got that instant feedback. I find that that's something that so many of us struggle with in terms of wanting to receive and accept that feedback. So were you just wired differently? Was it always okay? Were you good at receiving the critical feedback?
There may have been feedback on the feedback, back in the kitchen after not so great tip was left. But no, I think I'm super competitive, right? And so waiting tables was competing with myself per se. Sometimes you competed with your coworkers. But I would go home every night and I kept all my, take my heavy, again, back in the day, Ronell, smoke filled apron home And my dad was normally watching TV at the end of a shift, and so I would dump everything onto the carpet in the family room as he's watching Dukes of Hazzard,
Yeah.
and we count it all up, and we would rate the night, right? And it was interesting is I started out in a really small, like, kind of ice cream sandwich parlor, waiting tables kind of during the day, or during the day, and the weekends, maybe some nights during school, but not very often. And then as I got older, I moved into I upgraded my restaurant to one that served alcohol. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, well, like, this is a completely different game. This is a
Hmm.
completely, same percentage, right, was being left behind, but the tab was totally different.
Hmm.
And then I say I got my big break one night when one of the girls at the bar in the basement, the sports bar in the basement, did not show up for work. And the manager came to me and said, "Hey, like, I need someone to waitress in the basement." And I wasn't even old enough to drink alcohol. I wasn't even old enough to drink beer. I grew up in Kansas, so we had 3-2 beer. I wasn't even old enough to drink at that point. But I thought, like, I went downstairs and I felt so grown up. And not only that, I was like, this is mixing my two favorite things. I got people were going to pay me to watch sports and deliver beer. I thought this was the best thing ever. And then at the end of the night, the apron was very, very heavy. And,
Nice.
that's when I started to realize that, again, just like I equate it very much to sales. And one of the things I think we'll end up talking about today, because it's a passion topic of mine, is that a lot of people pick the wrong sales job for them. And as a
Mhm.
result, they don't own the income that they could own. They don't have the life that they could have. And so I think those were very distinctive lessons in my life that, I finally got to where I was like, hey, a waitress in the basement at the sports bar was much more profitable than even waiting tables
Yeah.
upstairs.
So, as I look at your background, you have a degree in journalism. Um, so talk to me about when you got into, business sales
Hmm.
and why.
Hmm.
You had a journalism degree. What is it that you set out to do, and how did you end up here?
Yeah, good question. My writing skills had always been superior to other people, and I kind of had gravitated towards the social studies, English side of curriculum. Science and math just had never really worked out for me. And so I kind of fell into something in school that I really did. I kind of like picked something I thought I would enjoy doing. I didn't really know what I was going to do with it, but I got my degree in public relations. And so I really did think that was what I was going to do. And I took some internships over the summers to do that. But then I realized that didn't pay. Like, that didn't pay at all. Like, that was some of the worst income of the friends that I had in school and what they were going to potentially make coming out of college. And ironically, as I started to interview for jobs through the business school, because it was a hybrid degree. It was really called business communication. So it's about a third of your core courses were out of the business school and 2/3 were out of the journalism school. But retailers started to interview me and show interest. I had an offer from Kmart, if you everyone remembers the blue light special. And then I had an offer from a privately owned company called the Mercantile Company, but the Jones Store Company out of Kansas City. And they owned, a few department stores, a few being 40 or 50 throughout the Midwest. And so I started my career in retail sales. So I went into the department store. I managed the cosmetics and the shoe department. They were the commission departments. And I did that for about 2 or 3 years until the May Company, so Famous Bar here in St. Louis, hired me and moved me to help it open two new stores that they were going to be opening here. And then I ended up down in the buying office. So I spent 8 years in retail before getting out of that and getting into the software business.
S- I can identify with that as I started my sales career in retail. So I want to know, like, what 8 years in retail, what did you learn? What did you learn that has kind of impact? This is going to lead to to one of the questions I like to ask all of my
Sure.
guests, which is the philosophy piece. I like to know about your philosophy on business and sales, and
Hmm.
I find that philosophy is built through experience, life
Hmm.
experience, right?
Hmm.
So I learned some very valuable ones in the retail world that is just fueled the way that I feel about sales and business to this day. So I want to know, what did you learn those first 8 years in retail that maybe people in college weren't learning, or people in traditional, like,
Yeah.
corporate B2B sort of sales? What'd you learn?
Yeah, it was really interesting. The first 3 or 4 years when I was in the stores as a manager, I was managing people that were my parents' age, so it was very weird. The departments that I had been tasked with had older sales associates in them. So cosmetics and shoes had older sales associates. And so, but I learned that, that again, super competitive, right? So I learned a little bit of the dog eat dog. I mean, it wasn't 100% commission, but it was definitely a commissioned position. And there were only two in the store. And so on the cosmetic side, I learned to sort of let the ladies fight it out. I initially made the mistake of letting them come to me and complain about so and so took my sale and that was my customer, and I would try to smooth things over. I thought, as a teenager, I used to say that women, my friends would call me, and I called it Cry with Kristie, would call me about their problems and their boyfriends, and I would try to solve these problems for them. And I did the same when I got into retail. And then I realized that the only person that had the monkey when they left my office was me.
Mm-hmm.
And so at some point I like had the epiphany, and I woke up, and even the men were there was a little bit of, competitiveness amongst the men that caused some rub against occasionally too. But as people started to then come to me, I said to them, hey, listen, I'm happy to have this discussion, but not alone. So if you'd like to go get the coworker that you're having an issue with and bring them into my office, I'm happy to sit here and work through it, the three of us.
Mm-hmm.
And that ended a lot of people landing in my doorstep, right? And so, really what I did try to do in the stores is try to, I would say, mediate conflict or teach people how to deal with conflict. And I think people still suck at that in general. And I think this is a problem that we get into with sales, where I say to some people, some sales reps, like, you have to give them permission to say no, because maybe is a complete waste of your time. And so helping people open that door to conversations that are, uncomfortable, I guess, getting comfortable with uncomfortable conversations.
Mm-hmm.
As I got into the buying office, oh my gosh, the lessons were endless. Negotiation skills became like really sharp. I affectionately say, when you have to go to New York and negotiate with Marty from Mud, and I say, Marty, I need 500 more denim shorts. And he's like, Kristie, the boat, what am I going to do? I mean, it takes a while. I'm like, Marty, come on. I know you got some. I know you got some. What is it going to cost? Right. So, I mean, those guys were, negotiating with vendors in New York, once a week, every month, to try to get the best deal, so that I could put so I could put product on my floor that I could give the best deal to, was a challenge. For someone who hated math, I loved retail math. Like, retail and business math seemed a lot easier for me, but every Monday, for those people who don't even know what balancing your checkbook for real with your check register is like, every Monday we did open to buy. And that was literally balancing your checkbook to see if you had any money to spend in New York, or if you owed money, so to speak, if you'd marked down more clothes than you had open inventory of. And so every Monday we had to do that and turn it into our boss, who turned it into their boss, who turned it into the president of Famous Bar. And so I really sharpened my math skills. I really sharpened my negotiation skills. And the thing that's really interesting about being a buyer is, everybody thinks it's super glamorous. And I said, yeah, like, no one sent me to Paris, and I wasn't designing anything for anyone. It was about assortment. It was making sure that I didn't ever run out of a white t-shirt or the cutoff shorts that I was begging Marty for more of. It was identifying trends really early on and doubling down on those. And so it was super analytical. And so I really honed those type of skills that really have benefited me today early on in my retail career.
In the sales world, a lot of our education comes through experience, right? Getting out there and doing it, and mentorship and coaching. And sometimes those are like official mentorship roles. Sometimes it's just someone that's more senior that gives you some advice that sticks with you. I call that um, on our platform. I call that the unsung hero. I'd like to give you a moment to share with me maybe an experience with someone that was an unsung hero in your career, somebody that made an impact. Maybe it was something official, an official
Mhm.
mentorship role, or maybe it's just, somebody that gave you a kind word of advice that just has helped you to be successful. Who would you like to shout out?
Ronell, Miss Fitzgerald is probably my unsung hero. My very first job out of college at the Jones Store Company in Topeka, Kansas, she was the store manager. And she was just a force to be reckoned with. I mean, like, even I think as a customer, you might have been scared of her. But she super tall and thin and wore her 3-inch heels. And if you know anything about being on your feet and working a retail job, the last thing you're going to do is wear your 3-inch heels at all to work.
Yeah,
Um,
I know. I worked retail, and those 3-inch heels were killing me. I'm telling you.
yeah, right. I
I know what you
know.
mean.
Right. Yeah. I didn't even own any that I would wear to work. But she was she was a little rough around the edges. She was a chain smoker. She'd find her out back with with the smoking employees any chance she would get. She wasn't college educated. And so I think it was a really, really impactful thing for me to see somebody like her work her way up from sales associate to running the store. And again, very street smart, very practical, a little bit of a truck driver mouth. And so I think I don't know that it was anything that she said in particular. I think it was just that I had a role model. In
Mm.
the early 90s, I saw a very strong and opinionated and outspoken female running a store with a company that would be part of a Fortune 500 company at some point. And I just think that left a lasting impression for me that really like here's somebody who probably didn't have all the advantages that I had, and growing up, and look where she landed, and if she can do it, why couldn't all of us do it?
When I hear that story, what's resonating with me is the importance of representation, right? Like,
Yep.
she showed you what was possible, right?
Yep.
You're fortunate to in just getting into that whole business world to see someone in a position that that you looked like, right? Or now, I'm sure you guys look very differently. She was older, but
We did look very different, but yes.
but you could see yourself in that
Yes.
in her. So shout out to Miss Fitzgerald. That's a fantastic story, and thank you for sharing that with us.
Sure.
So I want to ask you, um, you know, I believe that in our philosophy on business and sales is formed through experiences that we have, right? And that, for me anyway, if for those of you that have read the book, if you haven't, what are you doing with your life? Go get the book. Get the book. A lot of what's in the book, my philosophies are all built on these experiences that I had. Some of them were good, some of them were bad, but nonetheless impactful. I'd
Mhm.
love if you could share one of those experiences that you've had in your career that's helped to formulate your philosophy on sales and business.
Yeah, I think actually it probably goes back to before career. My parents owned a real estate company. My dad was owner broker, and my mom was a commission sales rep. So she was a real estate agent at 100% commission. She'd spent her first 13 years actually as an English teacher and a Spanish teacher. And my dad had started out his career out of college as a mid-level manager for the United Telephone Company, which you might would equate today to AT&T. But at some point, when I was in my formative years, they made the decision. My dad made the decision to go into business with his brother, who owned a Coldwell Banker in Topeka, Kansas, and he moved us from the armpit of Kansas, Russell, to Topeka. We'd moved several times. Russell was our fourth stop on the United Telephone Company train. Um, and I affectionately say that my brother and myself, I have a younger brother, that we got our MBA at the kitchen table. My dad had always sort of talked a little bit about work, and we were kind of office rats, if you will. Like he would, go to work on the weekends, and we would go hang out and play around in the yard at the office. But once my mom got into real estate, like all of our conversations, because real estate is a really rough business, particularly for the real estate agents who go to work when everybody else isn't, right? So my mother worked nights and weekends. When that began, for as long as I can remember, it totally changed the dynamic of our family. My dad is now, running us to dentist appointments and
Hmm.
softball practice, and sometimes showing up for school events that my mother wasn't going to be able to make because of out of town buyers or the like. And so, from like really through osmosis, like money was a completely transparent topic in our house. I knew when my dad was and wasn't taking a salary. I knew when my dad wasn't taking a salary to make payroll for his employees. I knew when my dad wasn't making a salary or taking home income to pay my mother's quarterly taxes. I knew what every commission check my mother earned was. And there's no doubt in my mind that I'm where I am today, and my brother is a top performer at a $1 billion privately owned company in the staffing industry. As as he's been one of the top performers in his region for years. And so it's interesting that my brother took my mother's path as an individual contributor, and I took my father's path as leader, because there were definitely pros and cons to both, but neither of us would ever change places. And I think the things that I saw, real estate's a really cutthroat and kind of unforgiving business. When the real estate market is bad, things are really bad, and it's a super competitive business. And so I think I saw all kinds of things. I think the lessons I learned were, I saw all kinds of real estate agents too, because again, like I did everything from phone duty from 3 to 5 after school sometimes, and sometimes I was out there mowing the lawn on the weekends while my dad was doing work inside. So the business was part of our life. But I think what I learned is that there, like, people go into real estate, which is a really hard sales job, as 100% commission for all different kinds of reasons. Some of them have college degrees, some of them don't. Um, I learned to not judge a buyer by its cover. My dad finally said to me, as we were old enough to understand, he's like, people spend their money different ways. Don't judge how they do that. Some people don't care about houses but care about cars. Some people don't care about cars but care about vacations. Some people care
Mm-hmm.
about clothes. And he said, don't judge a buyer by its cover. I think really stuck to me, and I try to take that forward into seeing different people and saying, listen, everybody has a different choice as to how they spend the income that they bring home. Again, I'm here to try to help people bring in as much income as they possibly can so that they can have the life and spend it the way they want. But I think a lot of my philosophy around sales and sales leadership, because my brother and I really lived it day in and day out. That my dad got calls all night long as the broker. Agents were calling him all night long with problems or questions or how do I handle this or what do I do in the contract. And so I think my brother and I have a very strong work ethic, and we never ever thought, I think, jobs were 9 to 5, 7 days a week. That was never what we saw. That was never the life we lived. And so I think so much of my childhood and growing up, and my dad didn't retire till he was 65. My mom retired about the same time as well. But even then, kept their broker's license. And then both of my parents also stepped into leadership as I'll call it the give back way. Both my parents were the president of the Kansas Association of Realtors and the president of the Topeka Board of Realtors. And then my dad was on several boards in the Kansas City real estate community. So I think I also saw, that's like, there's just a little bit of money, but there's a lot more hassle than you get paid for. So, my dad was also on the board of Habitat and some other things. So I also saw my parents, once they reached a certain level, give back to their own industry, give back to the community. And I think that was important.
So is that something that you do now as well? So like, tell me how those lessons have influenced the way that you do business today.
Yeah, I do a couple things. I definitely mentor. So I'm a mentor for several early stage startups or accelerators here in the St. Louis area. So one through Lindenwood University, one Capital Innovators, which is a very early accelerator. So I mentor for both of those. Um, and then I think this is a Christieism. I say I have 30 minutes for everyone. So if somebody reaches out to me and says, "Can you talk to my friend?" or "Can you, so and so is looking for a job." I got a resume sent to me by one of my good friends yesterday for a woman who is in a Fortune 500 company in HR, and he's like, "I don't know if you can help, but I thought you might be able to." And so I really put myself out there, and I really do say I've got 30 minutes for everybody. I said because I have a journalism degree, my writing skills are superior to most people. So sometimes it's helping people improve their resumes. Sometimes it's writing the Dear John letter for a girlfriend to her boyfriend, and editing that. So I do a lot of things, I think, in a give back way that I think are important. One of the other things I do that I feel really strongly about, because we need more women in sales, is I teach junior achievement. I teach it at the 7th grade level and at the 3rd grade level, and I've been doing this for years. It's no surprise that I remembered my dad doing it when I grew up. My dad was teaching junior achievement. Um, and every curriculum at every level, grade level at junior achievement, has a money component, a business component to it. And I want them to see a woman. I want them to see a female come in and teach them about business, as a 3rd grader or as a 7th grader. I think that's important.
As do I. And I think that part of that goes back to your initial entry into the business world, right? Shout out again to Miss Fitzgerald, right? Like,
Yep.
so now you get to be her and set that example and show that representation for the next gen. So I think that's fantastic. I love it. This leads me to my last question. As we get into, again, the concepts of the book is about philosophy and then practical, pragmatic executions, just simple, because I believe that sales at its heart isn't that complicated. So I would love it if you could share with our audience some simple advice, direction, tip, tactic, whatever you want that they can take from this particular episode and apply to their business and start seeing some success.
Yeah, I just finished completing a book. It's not out yet, but it's called Selling Your Way In. And it really is about setting your own income and owning your own life in the way you want. And I spend about the first third of that book talking about knowing yourself, knowing your strengths, and then making that match with the right sales job. Again, I say this day in and day out, and I used to blame hiring managers, right? I'm like, hired a farmer instead of a hunter. But to some point, I was like, you know what? You have to be self aware enough to know and apply for the right job, right? And so I say sales reps are professional interviewees, buyer beware. And so, like, if you're on stage, sometimes you can look like a hunter when you're really not a hunter. Or I say you can have hunter skills, but your passion and your heart really is a farmer. And so, I say to people when people do call me and say, "Hey, can you talk to my friend? They're thinking about going into sales." I immediately, and it's just to mess with people to run out because I know that they don't have the answer. But I'm like, "Well, what kind of sales job do they want?" And they're like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "Well, you think there's just sales jobs, but there's not. There's like 74 different sales jobs, right?
Mhm.
Everything from, again, retail sales, 100% commission sales, inside sales, outside sales, customer success is a sales job, sales engineer is a sales job. There
Mhm.
are all kinds of sales jobs. And so I think it's my responsibility as somebody who really does and really like picked her swim lane over time after having had some sales experience in different ways, and truly understanding that 7 years ago I started my own business after working for other people in SaaS and technology, and prior to that into retail. And so really knowing that, again, there are jobs with a set income and jobs where you set your own income. And I think part of setting your own income is picking the right job so that you can maximize your income if that's your goal, and maximize your professional standing within the community, be a leader, be a mentor. But you can't be any of those things if you haven't picked if you're struggling all the time, because again, our traits are formed at a very early age. Most people say your traits are formed by 10. And I think that's true for me. And so you have to pick the right job that matches the traits that you have. And not only that, to bring joy to your life, right? So that you can get up every day loving what you do, and not being like, oh my gosh, I have to go to work today. And I do think that some of the reasons why people don't want to get out of bed in the morning, particularly in the sales world, is they pick the wrong job.
I think that's great advice, especially today, where in the tech world we've had such a it's been a transitional year for a lot of people. A lot of people that have either been downsized or aren't seeing the levels of success that they were seeing during the pandemic. So I think that's terrific advice to really evaluate. Hey, what do I not only what do I really want, but what matches um, my desires, my skill sets, my passions, all of those sorts of
Hmm.
things. So
Hmm.
great advice. I appreciate that, Kristie. I want to know, I want you to tell people how do they get more of this brilliance? What's the best way to get a hold of you and to work with you?
Yeah, perfect. Probably LinkedIn is the best way. I love connecting with people on LinkedIn. So, Kristie Jones on LinkedIn. Again, you'll see that I'm a consultant and I work with startup founders. That'll be probably jump right out to you. And I'm in St. Louis, Missouri. So I love connecting with people, getting feedback from them. I love hearing people who've heard the podcast and reach out and tell me that they took one thing away that maybe they hadn't been thinking about. So my website is salesaccelerationgroup.com, but probably the fastest way to find me is LinkedIn.
Awesome. I appreciate that. And guys, we'll have that information in the show notes as well. But make sure that you reach out to Kristie if you're a good fit in terms of doing business with her. But you'll definitely be a good fit in terms of receiving some more of this wisdom and education that she's putting out there to the world. Kristie, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be part of the Shut the Hell Up and Sell podcast and Shut the Hell Up and Sell family. I look forward to seeing you soon in
Thank you.
St. Louis, maybe. Who knows?
Nice. You never
Hey,
know.
you never know. I hear you've got some baseball that is played there. I hear
We
that
Yeah, well,
there's
don't
some.
bring it up right now, Ronell. Like the city is not happy with the Cardinals right now.
Oh, really?
No, no, it's not going well. In fact, they were the first time they said earlier this last week, the first time the stadium had heard boos.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so Cardinals need to get their act together because we do love our Cardinals, but we also, we expect them to be above 500.
Okay, well, there you go. Cardinals, you are on notice.
You
Get
are
above
no, yes.
500. All right. Or otherwise, you're going to be on Christie's new podcast, Crying with Kristie.
That's right.
Kristie, this has been awesome. Thanks again for your time. And hey, most importantly, thank you to all of you that are listening, that are watching. I hope that we're bringing some value to you. And yeah, if you're enjoying this, please give us 5 stars. Give us 5 stars. Give us a review. Let your friends know. That's how we grow this thing organically. And this platform is at the end of the day is all about you guys. So I want to make sure that we're providing you value and that we're making real impact. And if we're not, if we're missing the mark, let us know. But if we are hitting the mark, let us know. We got to know so we can make sure and serve you the very best that we can. All right, guys. As I say on every single show, I want you to remember, guys, if you don't remember anything from this show, although there was tons of wisdom bombs and gems dropped, if you don't remember anything, though, remember this. Shh. Say less. Sell more. See you next time. Hey guys, it's Ronell, and I just wanted to thank you for listening to this episode of the Shut the Hell Up and Sell podcast. If you liked it, please rate us 5 stars on whichever podcasting platform you're listening to this on. And while you're at it, punch that subscribe button. That way you get notified every time we drop a brand new episode. Hey, I'd also appreciate it if you went to our website, shutthehellupandsell.com, and became a member. It's absolutely free, and you'll have the opportunity to listen to previous episodes of our podcast, check out some of our free courses, get a copy of the book, and we'll send you sales tips and motivational nuggets from time to time. Lastly, if you'd like to book me for either appearances or speaking engagements, just send an email to my team at team@shutthehellupandsell.com.